Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. We're doing a special presentation with two guests, so we have a slightly different format again today. And we're focusing on Missouri Southern, and the Caribbean semester has had a lot of presentations with lectures, guest presentations, and of course arts and music. And today, the music is our focus of our program. Joining me from the Missouri Southern Music Department, Dr. Nicolas and John Rudy Perrault. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
And I'll explain to our audience, we're focusing on a special concert that's coming up, but it's more than that. It's the special presentations as well. So, Rudy, I'd like to let you start off by telling us your reaction when you found out Missouri Southern has a whole semester looking at this region of the world.
That is quite a unique festival. I don't know of many universities that are dedicating an entire semester. I've heard of perhaps 1 or 2 weeks where they concentrate on certain part of the world, but to dedicate an entire semester where you can really go in depth, and so I think that's a brilliant idea. It was surprising, I have to admit, that I didn't think that it would be happening in Missouri Southern State University. And when Dr. Nicolas at first called me, I thought, oh, what a wonderful, he's taking the lead on this, and then found out that, I know they've been doing this for a while, way before he even got here. So I am really very impressed with what's going on at Southern State.
Great. Well, tying obviously into our international mission, Dr. Nicolas, you are one of the many people who helped plan this, and the musical aspect's always been a tradition. Tell me about your feelings about being able to have this type of musical presentation tied to this.
Well, as someone who grew up in the Caribbean region, so I feel like it's actually part of my duty to program something from that region. And since I've been here, I've been at Southern for the past 3 years, and in every one of the orchestra concert, I've always programmed a Haitian piece. And when I found out that we were going to do the Caribbean semester, I said, well, that's even better. So I get to program not only just Haitian pieces, but also pieces that just represent the whole region. So I'm really excited. In fact, I can't wait for Friday, so we do our performance.
Well, this is an exciting project, and I think perhaps people might be interested in perhaps both of your backgrounds as well, because we're talking about the background. You mentioned Haiti. Share a little bit of background for the audience with yourself first to begin with.
Grew up in Haiti until high school, and then traveled to Philadelphia to go to school there in college at Temple University, and once graduating and did my master's as well there. I started freelancing in Philadelphia. I played with the Chamber of Music of Philadelphia, the Chamber Ensemble of Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Virtuosi, and then after a while moved up to New York, to a bigger pond.
Right, big city.
And also there was very lucky to be performing with some incredible musicians, the New York Virtuosi, the New York Pops, and I had my own show. I was doing a Broadway show at the time, did Beauty and the Beast for 6 years, did Les Miserables, did Secret Garden, and just a whole slew of Broadway shows on Broadway.
So you were really involved in Broadway.
I was deep in the Broadway thing. But I realized that I missed teaching. I was so busy performing that the one thing that I didn't think I was going to miss it as much, but I did. So when the position opened up at the University of Minnesota in Duluth, and I applied for it and got the position, and it's been great. This was my 21st year at the University of Minnesota there, so I'm loving it. I don't care much for the weather, but it comes with the city and the wonderful students, so I guess I'll take it.
Right, so teaching has become you can follow up on your passion for
Correct.
Working with students. And our audience may not realize we have a student-mentor relationship here. Tell me a little bit about that, Dr.
Yeah, so also growing up in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, getting involved with our orchestra there. As a kid, I always heard the name Rudy Perrault a lot, but I didn't really know the face. It wasn't up until 2004 that we invited him to be the guest soloist for one of our concerts at the time. I believe it was in December. And that's when I actually get to put a face behind the name. And from there, we talked. He gave a master class. I played for him. And we had a little talk about, if I wanted to study music some more. And then from there, you know, he was kind of like working behind the scene into recruiting me to get to the University of Minnesota at Duluth, and that's kind of where things started for me in terms of my career. Yeah.
So I imagine you've been following his career quite a bit as well.
Oh,
after
I
you
have.
graduated.
I have. I've just keep track of him and make sure that all of the years of hard labor trying to teach him everything, or at least everything that I know, you know, that is paying off. And it's wonderful what the job that he's been doing. I've rehearsed with the orchestra yesterday, Monday. And to tell you the truth, I had no expectation of. I know that sometimes even big universities you go to and then you get this like, oh, that's not what I was hoping. So I had absolutely no expectations, and I got there, and I was really very happy to hear the work that not only that they were doing, but his preparation of the work, the Haitian works that will be performing, and also the Chevalier de Saint Georges, her composer from Guadeloupe, as part of the Caribbean theme. His preparation of the orchestra, I think, was perfect. Was very good, and I really enjoyed it. We had fun.
Great.
I didn't have much to offer to the ensemble, so
Looks like
he's
it's
been
ready to
doing
go.
a very good job. So
All right,
he can continue to put my name next to his.
Well, tell me about the process of developing the concert and the work. Obviously, you've done a lot of work with the students on campus, preparing for this and selecting the music. What behind the scenes people don't see before you actually make the stage.
Yes, I'm actually glad that you mentioned that, because when Chad and I we started with the theme semester for the Caribbean, that was pre-COVID. So I had all those ideas in mind in terms of different pieces, different compositions. I wanted to really represent the whole region, and I call him sometimes, and we had another one of our mentors too, who recently passed away. One of his pieces that he arranged will be featured on Friday as well. His name was Julio Racine. But I remember being on the phone with him as well and trying to find different pieces to program for this concert. Then COVID happened, so I had to kind of
Scale back.
revamp things a little bit, especially knowing that there were certain things I wouldn't be able to do, such as having the full orchestra and things like that. So I had to kind of figure out how to program good music, make it a valuable experience for the performers, for the students, but at the same time still try to represent the Caribbean. So then we come up with a version of having chamber, some sort of a chamber group, and then we're gonna do two pieces that will kind of use the full orchestra. But it was a blast to program, but at the same time, I'm gonna blame COVID. We're not really going to have the full effect of what I really wanted to represent, to highlight when it comes to the Caribbean regions. But it's been great.
It sounds like it's an educational opportunity, not only for our students, but the community, because when they think of Caribbean and music, they may not think of orchestras and that type of music.
Correct. And today I did a talk on a lecture on emerging Caribbean composers, and we touched, and unfortunately, there's such a wealth of music from the Caribbean, but sadly, the time allotted for the lecture, it's just not enough time. We could spend an entire week and cover.
Well, it's a wide region.
It's a big. I mean, there are so many great pieces being written or had been written. So as part of the lecture, I was giving them a little sample of each of the regions.
So do you see a distinct sound or differences between the different regions and how people present their music or interpret it? Or
I mean, as for the whole
when
region?
you're looking, you talk about the region in the Caribbean.
There are some sounds that will be distinctive depending on the country,
Right.
but there are some similarities as well, because when you're looking at the Caribbean, just if you remove the musical aspect of it, when people say the Caribbean, people are always imagining beautiful weather at the beach and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at the music aspect of it, there are some similarities in terms of for the most part, they're danceable. They're like dance-like, and you get this Latin flavor as well, and some African. And Cuba is the one country that really popping up in my head with their Afro-Cuban rhythm. So I mean, in a way, every country or every island might have something that is very distinctive to them.
Right.
But there is something as well that you can maybe say that kind of unite them.
Ties it all together.
Ties it all together.
Right.
Yes, I would even add, yes, it is. If we generalize a little bit, you can hear that flavor, that island flavor that we sometimes people can't quite put their finger on. But we should not think of Caribbean composers as some sort of a monolithic society. They don't all write the same way. There is a breadth of styles and instrumentation and genres. You know, they will equally write something in a calypso and then turn around and write an opera. And I would say, for example, in the lecture, if you present the music, and I'm not talking about those that are expressly trying to show that they are Caribbean, because that there is also a niche for that. If you want to be seen as Caribbean or as a black or brown person writing this, there is a way to do that. However, not everybody does that. They want their music to just stand on their own. So you have to think of them as equally versatile in all the genres as any other country or any part of the world. They hear it, you know. Even in Haiti, growing up, I used to listen to Tchaikovsky, to Beethoven, to Brahms. Yes, maybe there was that one radio station at odd hours I would do it, but I would tune in and listen to some of those things. So our experiences learning our instruments, we had a limited amount of repertoire that we can actually study. There was nothing written for the violin in the compas style or in the calypso style. You know, we had to Schwajek, you know, Kreutzer, all of those big studies that all violinists basically need to learn. Those are the same thing that we learn. So when you think of composers, they also viewed composition the same way. They had sort of that European tradition of instruction, but then they would add their own little touches here and there. You can say, yeah, there's something a little bit different. But as far as structure, form, chord progression, all of this stuff, it's like, yeah, we know all this stuff. We just decide we're going to go a slightly different way, just to highlight.
Personalize it.
Yes, personalize it, exactly.
And tying it together. And you mentioned in Haiti having the performances and the people coming in. So the cultural aspect of symphony music is strong in Haiti as well. Then you mentioned, you know, listening to it on the radio, but you do have opportunities there. People.
Yes, I mean, during my time, it wasn't as much as it is now, because especially with the evolution of internet, or people actually have a little bit more access now. And obviously there are a lot more music schools now happening in the country as well. When I was there, and probably during his time too, the Holy Trinity, they called the Music Sainte Trinité, was the main music school. But they've been doing such an amazing job over the years that they're able to kind of like have other branches. So now you have all those different schools. So now you don't really necessarily need to come to Port-au-Prince to learn how to play the violin, for example. So there are so many schools that are popping up all over the island. Some great schools, Semushka in Cap, Marmelade. You have Jacques Mel de Saint-Baptiste, Othello Bayard in Kai. I mean, all of those schools are, the teachers for those schools are all products of Sainte Trinité. They all started in that one little,
and then it spreads from there.
Spread from there. And it's wonderful. I mean, I wish Haiti were in a different place, that we could have sort of the economic feeding the country really to be able to show off, because it's really what we need to do. We need to show off all the things that we are able to do and sort of change the face of Haiti. You know, every time you see Haiti, I mean, there are two things you hear: voodoo, and then the poorest country, the Western Hemisphere. That's the brand.
They don't see the sides of the culture and the art. And
they keep branding this as the poorest country. It's like, when are we ever going to get that branding off our backs? No matter what we try, they keep branding us with that, and it's very difficult to say, yes, we may have poverty, and there is poverty in Haiti, but let's think about it. There is poverty in the United States, the mightiest nation on earth, and why? So let's really get off Haiti's back on this, especially when we can analyze the history of some of those countries. They were colonies of other wealthier countries, and you didn't take care of that, and now you're blaming us for being in this. We don't want to get too political here, but but the fact remains that with more investment into all of those islands, there is and more attention to some of those islands, which is what I love. What the festival is doing is just putting a spotlight on a region of the world. It's like, let's learn about this little part of the world. Let's put the focus on this so that people are aware. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't know there was so much going on.
So many different topics you can cover. Right.
So I love that they're taking really their time to really address one region of the world. And it's like, let's not just do a 1 week festival and say, okay, check, done. It's like, no, they actually spending time doing it. All the art form, just Monday was Edwidge Danticat, and then so many others, and he's doing a lecture on Bob Marley. Yeah, it's really.
And we have the film festival as well.
A lot of different aspects people can learn about it. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your students working and learning this music. Obviously, the students here have different backgrounds.
They do.
So tell me that approach, or how did you approach with students, and maybe some music they haven't encountered before?
Sure. I mean, this orchestra is in a unique position, and by that I mean it's a hybrid orchestra that has students, whether music majors or non-music majors, some members from the community, faculty members even. So obviously you can see all those different backgrounds right there. But one thing I always enjoy, because I keep telling them, first of all, I do not speak English with an accent, and they always make fun of me when I said that. So then when we're doing Haitian music, then I get to make fun of them just a little bit because they can't move. They keep telling me they can't move, and I'm trying to have them move and have them dance, and
Yeah, you need to tell them they need to play the music with an accent.
That's probably the best way to put that. So I think, but they love it. They love it, which is why I keep programming them every time, because I feel like, well, they keep demanding it. And we have a lot of them, so I might as well. So it's been great to work with the orchestra on that, and I think not only that is kind of like changing the way of thinking when it comes to rhythm, but also phrases, for example. And we work on sound. That's probably, since I've been here for the past 2 years, we've been working on developing our sound. So I think, if anything, working on Haitian music get us in a better place rhythmically, but also melodically.
So it's building the program as well, and helping
exactly.
them out. Do you have a number of, you mentioned community members, people who have done this for many years?
Many years. I believe I still have some members that have been playing in this orchestra since the 80s. Wow. So this orchestra goes back a long way. So.
Well, what are your feelings about that lifelong love of music? I mean, a lot of people may have memories of being a child and they learn how to play the violin in 4th or 5th grade, but some of these people, community members perhaps, have carried that love through, and as adults, that's not their profession, but they still love to do it.
Yeah, I think starting a kid, whether or not you want them to be a professional, that's not the point. But starting them on an instrument, having them to learn what it takes to not necessarily master, but to be competent at the instrument, the amount of discipline that it takes. Those are lifelong lessons, skills. This sort of skill you can transfer into any sort of other field. Practicing an instrument, let's say piano, and you have to do it over and over until you have it right. So if you can think of taking that determination, those skills of redundantly doing something all the time, every time, until you have it right, and then you put it into a presentation. You do a PowerPoint presentation for let's say marketing. You get that just right so that you've covered everything that needs to cover. Just think how much better that is going to be rather than just throwing it together and it's like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but there's no flow. Yeah, those all may be the right ideas, but because the presentation is not there, the polish is not there, the finish is not there, the timing is not right, all of this comes into the final product. And this is what kids, when they go and they have to play a recital,
right,
that's the final product. They learn that to be to that place where they're no longer nervous because they know the place so well, that transfers.
Building that confidence.
Correct.
Tying them.
So music teaches you not just self-esteem, it teaches you discipline, it teaches you collaboration because they are playing in sections and they need to listen to each other and play the same way. It teaches you leadership because sometimes you are the principal player or the lone player. You could be the soloist, you could be. There are at so many levels that music, and I don't want to say just music because other art forms also do the same thing, but since I'm in music, I'm very biased. It teaches you so much for so many skills that you're going to need for lifelong.
They can stay with you. And I've heard that the mental development also that you're thinking in the mind is really
critical.
put in challenge.
Exactly.
Do you have students who might be like music education majors that they want to go on and teach in the future, but they're using their experience in orchestra and these performances to try to take skills?
Yes, I've had that before where, again, the students, I always told them that too, as I love sharing my experience, and I said, actually, one of the best way to learn something is actually when you're teaching it. You're realizing all this knowledge that you have, that you maybe at the time you weren't quite getting even, but when you're teaching, you're like, oh, all of a sudden, it's like there's a light bulb that's starting to blink or something like that. So to put that for music education, absolutely. I had students that are like, oh, well, I get this from orchestra, whether we're talking about a bowings there or we're talking about, even something as small as posture, that sometimes a lot of people don't realize change your sound and change the way, kind of like the whole perspective and things.
Together.
Exactly. So even things like that, when they take that to their classroom, and they're teaching, whether that's high school, middle school, and they're starting to have them, kind of like, and that moment make them a little bit, they're like, I feel proud, and it's starting to project all of a sudden confidence,
Right.
So, yeah.
Great. Well, music has often been called, the international language because you may not speak verbally the same language, but people communicating through the music, the notes that you see and putting that together. Do you feel that this is a true example of being able to do that, that you have, no matter which country you may be from or region, you can still read those notes and understand what somebody's written as a composer?
Oh, absolutely. You understand the theory. It is pretty much the same depending on the classical or romantic or Baroque. They still have a style of writing that's common everywhere. So when you get the neoclassical composers that would write in the classical style, they still have to abide to the same rules. And whether you were in Japan, whether you're in Brazil, or wherever else. I've traveled really to 27 countries, and the one experience that I remember, I was in Japan and visiting a friend of a friend, and she had a son, 4 years old, who was learning to play the violin. Yeah. And he seemed very interested by the fact that I had my violin with me, and he was very curious. And he didn't speak a word of English, and I think the mother also was. We were barely communicating.
Challenges.
But then I showed him, it's like, this is a violin, and there's a big grin. So I asked, do you play the violin? He said yes. And we had the best time together. We didn't speak one word to each other. But I was showing him certain things, and then we played games, and we had the best time.
Communicating through
without saying a single word. I know nothing about Japanese. I have my phrase book, but I couldn't. And he didn't. But we spent an hour just communicating, talking to each other without saying a word, and that was so beautiful.
That's great. And so by having concerts such as you're having, performances you're sharing with the community, this international aspect, but also the love of music that everybody involved, you all together as your performers or people in your organization.
Absolutely.
And so what would your goal be? I know we're recording this, it'll air after your actual performance, but your goals when you have performances like this, what would you like to accomplish most?
Well, I mean, for me, and I'll let him, he can join me on that, but especially for this area, and I know this is going to also be live streamed, so for people watching this anywhere else, but especially for our area,
Joplin,
the fourth state area. Again, like I said at the very beginning of this show, was that I feel like I am kind of almost like an ambassador when it comes to, in my case, Haitian music, but since we're doing the Caribbean semester here, for people to actually be aware of what's happening outside of the United States, because so often this country is so big, and you would have students that haven't been outside of the country, then all of a sudden most of them sometimes think that this is the world, and whether that's in my music appreciation class or in the orchestra, I always try to encourage people, if they can travel, do that. I mean, obviously we have COVID now to deal with, but but for this concert, what I'm hoping is that people are starting to be a little bit more aware of, there are other things, there are other music out there besides Brahms, Beethoven, Bach. I mean, those are great, but we have those other ones, especially the Caribbean being not that far apart or not that far away from the United States. Then this is what's happening a little bit closer home.
So really opening up some eyes for people, and obviously their ears and appreciation of the music, and tying that together.
And it is, for me, sparking that curiosity, just to be able to go up and look it up. Internet is a great thing.
Right.
You can, without leaving your couch, find someplace in Cuba, find someplace in Curacao, Aruba, Guadeloupe.
So that continuing learning, continuing education.
You're sparking that curiosity. You're making them wanting to learn more about it.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank both of you for visiting with me today and sharing with our audience who watch us.
You are very welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then. That was great. They're going to roll.